This is episode 2 of making a Halo ODST cosplay.
Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel. This episode is about filling and priming. So jumping into it, we are going to add the second coat of filler primer to the parts we had worked on in the previous episode. And once we're happy with everything being coated with a nice thick layer, we're going to set them aside for at least 24 hours until they are fully cured before we can wet sand. Whilst that stuff cures, we're going to hop back and work on some of the body fillered parts. Again, just going in with like a 240 grit sandpaper and smoothing those out. If you recall from episode 1, I added some body filler onto this back panel, and I said I was going to use my disc sander to sand it smooth. So here you can see I'm just doing that. I've got some 120 grit sandpaper on, and I'm just going at that thing and smoothing it out as much as I can. There's a few parts that require assembly, and From the Brinks has done an awesome job on modeling these. He's made it so you don't really need any complicated hinge system. They just print and you can clip them together and they hinge. But because of this, we want to avoid painting the hinged pieces, otherwise it could cause more friction, and you paint it, it'll just come off when you use the open and close feature. Like you can see here, this little door will open, and it's a little card holder. You can see that bit goes in there. And yeah, so we're going to avoid painting that lower part. The other two parts that have already been primed will be the only pieces that we want to prime. I'm going to tackle the forearms a little bit differently to how I would normally do stuff. With this one, they've got these little trim pieces that clip into place, which I will eventually glue. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave them clipped on when I paint them with filler primer to avoid any paint going onto those surfaces. I really want to have the glue adhere properly to the plastic rather than to the paint, because that could cause issues with the parts separating. The little detailed parts that I'm showing off now have been partly printed on my SLA resin printer. I use an Elegoo Saturn II, just with any cubic ABS-like resin. It's the same stuff I use for my resin visors. Yeah, this stuff I've just printed just for like the super small details. It just makes it easier. Don't have to sand it, and it looks good primed just straight off the printer. Staying on the forearm, we are going to assemble some of these parts. So the SLA printed parts are going to be glued down onto this little FDM detail, starting from this kind of vent piece. Going to add CA glue to it and then use the accelerator on the opposite surface, and then once those are in contact they're going to instantly bond, so make sure that you put it in the right place. We're then just going to continue gluing the rest of the pieces down until you have a complete part that looks like this. Finally, we're going to add our 2 layers of filler primer, allowing them to set for 24 hours before we sand. Moving on to the next part of this video, it's all about the sanding. And I know this is everyone's least favorite part of 3D printed cosplays, but hopefully with the method that I've just shown you, it will be a little bit easier. Because we've added those 2 thick layers of filler primer, it should give us a nice surface to smooth, rather than sanding down the 3D print like I mentioned in the first video. And this is kind of about like finding the fine balance between removing some of that filler primer to smooth it, but not all of it to expose the layer lines below it. For the most part, I use 400 grit wet and dry sandpaper. This allows me to remove enough paint without stripping it back too much. That's going to show layer lines. Once everything has been sanded, I like to wash it down with a hose. This just gets rid of any kind of leftover sediment or dust that's come from the sanding, and then when it dries, you then allow everything to dry overnight, or you can dry it down with a towel, whatever you want. Make sure that it's absolutely bone dry though. And we're going to add our third and final layer of filler primer, and this should help smooth everything out. Now you don't have to do this part, it's a bit of an artistic choice here, but I've decided to use some truck bed liner to give these parts a textured finish. This can is weird, I don't have a nozzle for it, so I'm kind of jerry-rigging a little push down on it, which puts out a bit too much of the truck bed liner, but once it dries it's usually pretty good. And as we close out this video, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for watching the first episode. All those likes and comments were really cool to see. I know these videos are kind of different, they're long format, which isn't usual for social media nowadays, but I'm just trying something different, and it's going well. Anyway, you can see in the background I'm adding the final layer of primer. This is a grey primer which will act as a base for the final paint job. Bit of a curveball. Next episode is probably going to be either about the undersuit or the rigging. I like to do this before I add the final base colors, just in case any of the glue spills and gets on the surfaces. You can then sand it down and reprime it. You don't really want that to be on your final base color, because then you could ruin a paint job. Anyway, that's for the next episode, so thank you so much for watching. Again, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one, hopefully next week.